I didn't listen to the press conference. I mean, I think that I think I've become immune to them, and that's probably not fair. But I think that at this point in time, um, I will say this. I think that they've done a decent job of going out and trying to attack this thing the best that they can. Um, I don't think there's any excuses that the reality is that obviously he wasn't the head coach, starting in January. He's the head coach starting at the couple days after Thanksgiving. And so that's what you signed up for. But I think when you're getting paid this much and you come with this much, with this reputation, you're expected to do this. And so I think it's good that they all went out there, and they aren't even a full staff yet. I mean, the wide receiver, I guess the staff knows the wide receiver coach is gonna be. Obviously, he's probably coaching somewhere else, and they got some other positions to fill. But when you look at it, they've looked at, they attacked both of the lines of scrimmage. Did a little bit in the transfer portal. Probably, I'd like to see them do a little bit more. Maybe get one of those linemen that they had in, at least right now, or maybe somebody that comes up later on in the year or in the obviously in the off season. But overall, I think that this is kind of a Matt Rhule type of class.
Well, you talk about the two lines of scrimmage. Offensive line was a big discussion point today. All day today with the class, with what they could do in the future here, and then also at the press conference, because there was a lot of questions revolving around Donovan Riola. Why did he decide to retain Donovan Riola? Here's one quote that stuck out to me, Jay, that now obviously it's just a quote, and we'll see what happens and how it all plays out. Like you said on the crossover, 2 years down the road when you can evaluate. But Matt Rhule said today, the team that controls the line of scrimmage wins games. I've learned to build a team that can win in the environment that you're in. And so, because he was talking about, hey, the way that college football is going to be shaken out here is he was talking about, expectations to play in the college football playoff come in, 4 or 5 years down the road. And he said there's going to be home field advantage because there's going to be non-neutral site games. Right, it's going to be on campuses. So he said, I was standing out on Memorial Stadium yesterday on the field, in the cold, in the ice, in the snow. And he said, I realized, hey, in 5 years, if we play in a game here in December, we need to be able to use that to our advantage. Right. And he goes, we need to figure out a way to boost the offensive line by that.
Right.
He goes, because we need to play, and we need to basically build a team that can play and excel in the environment that we are in.
Right.
So that was a thing for kind of sore ears and tired ears. I mean, that was music, because we haven't done that. Yeah. It's been the complete opposite. We've said it. Remember, because 2018 it was, hey, there's dudes out there warming up without a shirt on. They're tough.
Yeah.
But that's not true. I mean, that doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I think really what it comes down to, if you look at a lot of the classes of the offensive line, say like you take the last 5 or 6 years, there's only been one guy out of all the offensive defensive linemen in each class has been good. So, those 5 offensive linemen, you like to at least have 2 or 3 of those guys be guys you think would be starters or like rotational players, and same with the defensive line. I think when you look at it, like the edge, quote unquote edge.
Because that's how they're classifying dudes.
So, and I'm not really sure, Maverick Noonan is necessarily an edge. It'd be interesting to see, being 6'4", 225, where does he fit at it in the edge? Because if he's going to be like a 5 technique, a 6, he's got, that's 30, 40 pounds he's got to put on.
Yeah.
I've never seen him play up on, rush from 2 feet. But when you think of Dylan Rogers, I actually saw him when he was in town, and he's ready to go.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
From a physique standpoint. Maverick Noonan, I already talked about him. I think he's from technique wise and knowing how to play with his hands, he's there. And all these guys aren't expected to play. Kay Whalen is a guy that you keep your eye on. He's played higher competition.
The JUCO guy.
Yeah, JUCO guy. Any of these guys played. He's good. Another guy that's not necessarily an edge that plays maybe in this 3-3-5 is Eric Fields.
They're high on Eric Fields. They're high on Eric Fields. It's a guy that had 180 tackles in 10 games down in Oklahoma.
He's no joke though, man.
Yeah.
And then you got Elijah Judy, from Texas A&M. And then you mix in the guys that are like Jamari Butler, Garrett Nelson, and all those guys. All these guys that are coming in at these positions aren't going to play, especially the young guys, the freshmen.
Yeah.
So
you also
when
forgot to transfer Chief Borders.
I was about to say you're expecting. I would expect immediate returns from one or both, depending on how much eligibility they have left from Chief Borders and Kai Whalen. You got to have one of those guys really into the rotation. Now, I think they're a little bit farther ahead on defense because when you're thinking of a Colton Feast, Ty Robinson, and then a mix of Wynn, maybe Buckley, and then obviously Nash, where you think like, okay, we got 3 or 4 guys that are serviceable, and then mix in some other guys with the edge and get a little bit healthy at linebacker, we should be okay. Now, inside linebacker is something that probably needs to be addressed or looked at as well, just from a health standpoint. Productivity, being productive, I don't think you would really worry about it. I think that seeing where everybody's at health wise, and so who would be able to step up from the guys that are presently on the roster, or could you get some position flexibility of a guy like Jamari Butler, who's a lot probably more fleet of foot than everybody that we talked about.
Well, that's an interesting way to look at it with inside linebacker because you have a guy like Nick Henrich now who suffered 2 injuries this year because people would forget that he also had he had a broken hand,
right?
That he played through and had that giant cast or thing on his hand for a couple games, and then now suffered the season-ending injury. So I guess health wise at inside linebacker is something to definitely watch. One guy here, switching to the offensive side of the ball, Jay, he doesn't necessarily fit their speed profile, but in terms of hands and being ready to play, maybe make an impact day one in a limited capacity, Jaden Doss.
Yeah, he's probably the most polished out of all the receivers when you think about if you compare him to say like Malachi Coleman. Mm-hmm. I think Jalen Lloyd is pretty polished. I think just the size wise, he needs to get a little bit better.
And that's not counting Josh Fleeks, the guy they brought in from Baylor today.
Yeah. And you got to see because he played running back and he played receiver, so you don't know. He could probably be maybe like a Lante Brown, or you never. Yeah, never know.
What's interesting with Josh Fleeks? So he's listed as 6 foot 204 pounds right now. Coming out of high school, he was listed at 5'11", 170. So that means he's put on 30 pounds of weight. Right. In his time at Baylor's. Now, what does that mean? Who knows? But right. I think that was something interesting to look at. Is 6 foot, 200 pound, 204 specifically, to see where he's a fast guy though. Coming out of high school, he ran a 21-second 200-meter dash. Right. So he's a fast dude. So he fits their profile like that from that point of view. But 204 is an interesting weight for me because I'm not sure where they would put him on the field like that.
Well, if he's a player, 6 foot, if he's a playmaker, he could play on the outside. He could play in the slot. Period. If he's 6 foot, there's a lot of guys that Wandell Robinson was listed as 5'9".
That's true. Yeah,
and he's about 5'8". So he has plenty, and he can be that X factor. So it just depends on how well these guys come in and play. And so everything's all like projection. It's 43. By high school and 31 transfer rank, gives you 41 overall. Some people say it correlates to where you end up at the end of the season. I think I think 41 is the low point of where you should be at the end of the season next year. That means you should be at the worst, the 41st ranked team next year. Well, I think what you do with this is really how you make your money.
Now, obviously, like we say, stars are great, and Matt Rhule said it today. Is the stars and all the rankings go away when they get to campus because they're just another dude on. They're another guy on the team. They're another player in the locker room. But what's interesting here, there is some cause for applause when you look at what Matt Rhule and his staff have done with an incomplete staff, right, over the last couple of weeks. Because just 9 days ago, this was a recruiting class that was rated in the 60s. Right. And now here we are. That was 41st was as of this morning. Now they're sitting just outside the top 25.
Right.
So I understand recruiting rankings only mean so much. And Nebraska's had good recruiting rankings the last couple years. But now it's developing time.
Yeah, now you got to develop and get guys ready to play and coach them up too. So we'll see what happens.
So
it's a good start. We'll dive into it. I'm gonna try to pick on the surface, who I think could maybe top 4 or 5 that could, make an impact next year. I think next segment we're going to probably wrap up on Nebraska's game against Queens last night, and then we'll head into obviously the commitments and see if maybe during the show, maybe we see if my man Barry Jackson, see if he makes a decision where he goes with that. So
decision.
Yep, Jay Foreman and Nick, old school. We'll be back.